over to you on YouTube today. I've already been over on Facebook Live. If you are with me, please do share this message. If you're tuning into the replay, then capture that in your mind to replay and share this message with those who would benefit from understanding about free will. Holy crap. I almost said, oh my goodness, I just sat on Jesus. Whoops. All right, my apologies. So I sat on Saint Germain too, actually, because he's behind Jesus and he's got his back. Whoa. All right, I see my space is a mess. Like, we gotta be willing to make it a sacred space and bring the sacred back. So let's just take a little swig of the drink, which if we can get ourselves to actually start to focus on saving the earth, not because it's the only one with chocolate per se, but because that's what she said to do. And who is she? That is who we have to ask ourselves about. And so here we go. Oh, yes. Well, let's go on a third platform too. All right, Facebook. You're already live. YouTube, you're already live. And, oh, nice. Oh, that's so fun. There's a love story. Okay. I'm glad. It's great. Okay, I'm just needing to get off of their love story so that we can go live with our own, because that's what we are creating here. So welcome to the show, my friends. It's time for you to come with me and Saint Germain Jesus too, through all the darkness of our days, to get through all the haze of what's not ours in truth. And so I say to you, what do you do with yourself when you find that you are the one you were waiting for? It's true, it is an exciting time, and so I will start today with the reading of free will, and then I'll read the Wayshowers of the Aquarian age. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I am the one that gets to do this. It's so cool. So then we will get into the Magna Carta as well at 11 o'clock if you are able to join in. So it's pretty exciting. You know that I sing, you know that I do random things just because it's fun, and I give you permission to do the same by example. So I am an adult, 33 years old, willing to play and stand in my power and sit with Saint Germain as I read his book on alchemy. And it's called Formulas for Self-Transformation. It was profound when I found the section on the Wayshowers of the Aquarian age being Jesus Christ and Saint Germain, who are the two men I just literally sat on when I sat down on my couch. So timing is everything, and awareness of your emotion, of your environments, also is very key. So I'm going to read you free will right now, and if you're tuned in right now in this moment, please understand this message is meant for you. You don't necessarily have to be for the whole thing, but like this specific message is exactly what you needed. And it's so funny because the one who was on in that moment got off in that moment because they didn't want to know what the message was for them. And there's literally a story about somebody that had an opportunity to meet somebody that was going to just hold space for them to get the answer to the question that they wanted to know more than anything. And after years of waiting and formulating what he was going to ask, when he finally had the chance, he got there, and then he felt the presence of this person and realized that if he even got close to that man to ask his question, he would be forever changed. And he didn't know who he would be when he was changed, and so he forfeited the meeting and he went home before he got to meet the man that he had waited years to be able to meet. And the question is why? And the answer is free will. So what is free will? The freedom to create, the option to choose the right or the left-handed path, life or death, the positive or the negative spirals of consciousness. Having the gift of free will, the soul may choose to dwell in the plane of the relative where good and evil are relative to one's perspective in time and space, or she may choose the plane of the absolute where good is real and evil is unreal, and the soul beholds God as living truth face to face. Free will means that the individual may accept or reject the divine plan, the laws of God, and the opportunity to live in the consciousness of love. God's gift of free will carries with it a certain span of consciousness known as the lifespan, a series of embodiments, and the bounds of man's habitation. The soul, therefore, is not only confined to time and space during the period of her experimentation with free will, but she is also limited to a certain number of life cycles. At the end of this opportunity, compartmentalized in days, years, and dimensions, the use soul has made of the gift of free will determines her fate. The soul that has chosen to glorify the divine ego, reality, ascends into the presence of the I am that I am. The soul that has chosen to glorify the human ego, unreality, passes through the second death, her self-denying consciousness permanently self-canceled, and all of her energies simultaneously pass through the sacred fire, are returned to the great central sun for repolarization. That's from Revelations 26:11-15, 21:8, Acts 17:26. And that begins the chapter I wanted to share with you on Jesus Christ and Saint Germain, Wayshowers of the Aquarian Age. Saint Germain is said to look like this here. And as you look at that picture, and I ask you what is in the view of the picture that you hold before you, what's interesting is that if I asked you what you saw, and you asked me what I saw, it would be different, even though we were looking at the same picture, essentially. Not picture, but the same object. But it's totally different, just like the six-sided beach ball that has different colors on each side. And it's like if you're holding it with straight arms out and you can only see the pink and blue colors, you'll think that's what the whole ball is. But if you look at the person who is on the other side, they only see orange and purple, and they don't see the pink and blue, and they can't see your perspective, and you can't see theirs until you actually turn it around and say, yo, Jesus was on my side and Saint Germain was on yours. So those are the two guys in the picture. I'm going to keep it down here, and I'm going to put them right underneath of the emotional high rise of awareness. That is the theory that redefined me in learning how to share it in a way that you could actually use. Because theory, when it is just knowledge, doesn't change anything. It only becomes wisdom when you've applied it, and it becomes experience that actually helped you grow. So that's what we're going to do today, and we've got 48 minutes until we're going to be actually watching a video on the Magna Carta, when my friend Chantal Matheson is going to join me, since her and I are really learning about Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta for our own sake, so that we can advocate for ourselves as sovereign women of our own selves, and her of her children, as well as the leader of her family, alongside her husband, of course. But ultimately, as an individual, we're still responsible for our own selves, whether we're in a partnership or not. And these are the things that get lost when we form an identity based on who we are in relation to someone else. And that's what society depends on. And we have to understand that the culture that we are all sharing is the cult you are. So Jesus Christ and Saint Germain, Wayshowers of the Aquarian Age, which is said to be what we are now in. I'm going to have a drink of my coffee beforehand because it's delicious. And it actually is reminding me of my time in England because it smells like French vanilla. And yes, I understand that some will say, Laura, rabbit holes, squirrel, and magpie syndrome, and it sparkles, and so you go down a different track. But you know what? Sometimes that's just life. It's fun. And now we're getting down to the wire and the facts. So here we go. The Ascended Masters Jesus Christ and Saint Germain, passing the torch of the Christ consciousness and the I am that I am for the Piscean and Aquarian dispensations, stand in the long history of Earth and her evolutions as great deliverers of the nations by freedom's fire and salvation through the resurrection of the soul. The path of initiation that leads to the soul's reunion with the I Am presence, the ascension through the mediator, the Christ self, the open door to divine reality which no man can shut, is exemplified in Jesus, the Piscean Wayshower. The Savior's fiery baptism of the Holy Ghost is revealed through the Aquarian Master Saint Germain as he delivers to the people of God the dispensation of the seventh age and the seventh ray, the Comforter's all-forgiving violet flame and its application in the balancing of personal and planetary karma through the science of the spoken word. Saint Germain is the voice of the seventh angel, prophesied in Revelations 10:7, who comes to finish the mystery of God, as he hath declared to his servants, the prophets. In the 11th century BC, he was embodied as Samuel, prophet priest of the Lord, raised up from childhood to be the anointer of kings and judge over Israel. As the sponsor, affectionately called Uncle Sam of the United States of America, he is calling the 12 tribes from the four corners of the earth, making known to them their true identity as the light bearers commissioned to serve with the Ancient of Days to set earth's captives free. The Ancient of Days. Where are we? Where are we? I think that's just Dan. That's Daniel 7:9 and 13:22. Saint Germain brings to those lost sheep, reincarnated souls of the house of Israel, the remembrance of the name of the Lord God, I am that I am. Exodus 3:13-15. Moreover, he teaches them the power of this lost word, which was given to Moses and the prophets, and was also prominent in the Galilean mission of Jesus. Of this word that was truly made flesh in Jesus, John the Beloved says, that was the true light which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. John 1:9. Thanks to the teachings of Jesus Christ and Saint Germain, you too can know the Lord through your Christ self, who is your real self, prophesied by Jeremiah as the Lord our righteousness, and by Zechariah as the branch. By this presence within, every man shall know the Lord, the Word, as he sits in meditation, as Micah observed, under his own vine, Holy Christ self, and fig tree, the mighty I am presence and causal body. Jeremiah 23:5, 6:33, 15, 16. Zechariah 3:8, 6, 12, and Jeremiah 31, 33, 34, and then Mick 4:4. Jesus Christ and Saint Germain, together with all of the heavenly hosts, ascended masters, Elohim, archangels, angels, and servant sons of God, who comprise the spirit of the great white brotherhood, the multitude of saints robed in white, witnessed by Saint John in Revelations 3:4-5, 6:9-11, 7:9, 13, 14, 19, 14. 1914, have come forth from the inner mystery school at the end of Pisces and the beginning of Aquarius to teach us how to call upon this name of the Lord, alchemical formulas whereby we may put on our individual Christhood even while we overcome personified evil and the energy veil of our negative karma, the so-called sins of our past lives. By the law of transmutation, calling forth God's consuming violet fire in the name of the I Am presence, students of the Ascended Master's teachings all over the world are resolving relationships, transmuting the records of their karma, removing the stain of mortality in the psyche, and getting the victory over the beast of the adulterous self. This great overcoming of darkness by light in the individual encounter with the forces of Armageddon was prophesied by Jesus Christ to his disciple John, as he wrote in Revelation 12:11. And they, the true saints of East and West, overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. The blood of the Lamb is the essence, or the spirit, of the cosmic Christ, his person and his teaching, both of which have been withheld from the people for thousands of years by false Christs and gurus, false pastors and prophets, impostors in every field of endeavor, church and state, and in the governments and economies of the nations. Now, through the ascended masters and their messengers, the knowledge of the Lord and the divine mysteries held in the retreats of the Great White Brotherhood until the appointed time are being brought forth for all to see and know the truth that shall make them free. That's Hab 2:3, John 8:32. The word of their testimony is their witness unto the beloved I am presence, our God with us, and their exercise through him of the science of the spoken word, whereby in prayer, meditation, dynamic decrees, and communion with the Lord, his sons and daughters become the effective instruments of the universal Christ and his sacred labor. These are they which have the testimony of Jesus Christ. Revelations 12:17, 19, 10. Brought to our remembrance by the Holy Spirit in the dictations of the ascended masters to the messengers. The prayers, mantras, and decrees which emanate from the word, even the sacred Om, the universal sound and syllable of the Divine Mother, spoken under the dispensation of the ascended masters by their unascended disciples, are the means whereby the light bearers overcome the world tyranny and adulterous culture of the arch deceivers of mankind, fallen angels embodied in our midst in these final hours of the 20th century. This great overcoming, great tribulation is decreed by Almighty God as the coming of the ascended masters and their delivery of the everlasting gospel to the light bearers of every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Revelations 14:6. It is the teaching of Jesus Christ and Saint Germain that we must make every divine decree, prophecy, and scriptural covenant of the Lord our own, and then stand fast to behold the salvation of our God. As the deliverers of Jew and Christian, Muslim, Hindu, and Buddhist, Zoroastrian, and Confucian, and the striving one whose sacred labor is their religion in the Godhead, Jesus Christ and Saint Germain proclaim the Messiah already come in the person of each one's Holy Christ self, whose seat of consciousness and authority in the children of God is vested in the threefold flame, divine spark of the Trinity, sealed in the sacred chamber of the heart. Jesus, the Son of Man, who embodied this non-exclusive, all-inclusive light of the Son of God, came to teach us the way of the Christ incarnate, not in himself alone, but as the inheritance of every son and daughter of God. Thus, our brother, friend, and true Savior of our souls from death and hell fulfilled the law and the prophets. Matthew 5:17, whose path unfolded the progressive empowerment by the self-same word, which reached its culmination in the resurrection and ascension of our Lord, and all who have followed him on the path of soul regeneration. In truth and in the true science of the religion he taught, all mankind can and shall declare with the blessed Son of God I am, God in me, the way, the truth, and the light. John 14:6. And understand that it is the I am that I am, the Lord God dwelling in them, who is, was, and forevermore shall be the way, the truth, and the life. Whoa. Wow, what a show. So I want to get my thing linked so that it is charging. In fact, I apologize for the intermission, and yet What are you saying about that? Wow, what information, eh? Pretty profound. It's amazing who we actually are, what we actually are, when we actually understand it. It's just like, dang, if only we'd understood before, you know? If only we'd understood who we truly were. We wouldn't have been so insecure because we would have understood. But we needed to not understand in order to become who we've become through the journey. So that has to be okay. We have 35 minutes yet before the Magna Carta. And that was just gold right there, my friends. So hopefully you guys are plugged in now, and let's get going. The likeness of Jesus and Saint Germain were painted by Charles Sindler, famous American artist and illustrator of the 1920s and 30s. Jesus Christ appeared to the artist at 22 consecutive mornings at 2 a.m., and the image of the master would appear throughout the day over both canvas and etching plate, distracting him from his work until he took the advice of a friend to paint what you have seen. After 5 days of continuous work, the portrait was completed. Charles Sindler was not satisfied with his rendering of the mouth, and therefore on the 5th night at 2 a.m., Jesus returned until the artist had perfected on canvas the likeness of his master who stood before him. The messengers testify that the portrait of Jesus is the exact likeness of the master, as he has appeared to them both in the retreats of the Brotherhood in their homes and on the platform during dictations. They have confirmed that the portrait of Jesus depicts him as he appeared at the Royal Teton retreat, in consultation with Saint Germain and the Tall Master from Venus. A number of years after the painting of Jesus was completed, Saint Germain appeared to Charles Sinclair in the presence of Guy Ballard, and the artist completed the portrait as the messenger served as the anchor point to sustain the force field and the electronic presence of Saint Germain. Again, the messengers have stated that this likeness of Saint Germain is indeed that of the Ascended Master, who is their sponsor and the sponsor of America and every nation on earth. He has been known to devotees of freedom on the planet Earth for over 70,000 years, and his great love and sacrifice has enabled the evolutions of Earth to have the use of the violet flame for the transmutation of all misqualified energies of the human consciousness which stand between the soul and its salvation, self-elevation, through the Christ personified in Jesus, the Savior, the fullness of the Word incarnate. The Ascended Masters Jesus Christ and Saint Germain have given their life and their likenesses in these paintings as a glad, free gift for the salvation of Earth and her evolutions, and that the earth may be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, the I Am presence, as the waters cover the sea. Isaiah 11:9, Hab 2:14. Neither the masters nor their portraits can be confined to any creed, religion, doctrine, or dogma, nor can their names be invoked for the sealing of anyone's private interpretation of the law or the scriptures. These blessed ascended masters are the intimate friend, guide, teacher, counselor, and comforter on the way of life, walking hand in hand with the light bearers in this age. All who will call upon them in the name of the I Am that I Am will be blessed with an immediate manifestation of their electronic presence, the fullness of their tangible light body focalized in time and space within the aura of their disciple. The devotee may visualize himself with his right hand in the hand of Jesus, and his left in the hand of Saint Germain, calling upon these great Wayshowers of the 12 tribes of Israel. The devotee of truth may know with the certainty of cosmic law, whereby the call does compel the answer, that these ascended masters will never leave him as long as he remains obedient to the principles and practice of truth, life, and love, to the law of the One, and to the inner God flame, the I Am that I Am. Wow. What has happened to my Zoom meeting? It totally froze. That's interesting. The pictures of Jesus and Saint Germain that I happen to already have needing to be framed, and yet they couldn't be framed because I needed to have them here today. So Lanny was busy when I came in, which is great for him to know that it is. Here, I'm going to read the next part of this section of the book because it is very significant for us to understand the threefold flame. So, the alchemy of power, wisdom, and love, which is what the threefold flame represents. And now abideth faith, hope, charity, these three, but the greatest of these is charity. To whomever much is given, much is required. So, here we go. Chapter 1, Power. Gracious men and women, persistency is recognized as a quality which eventuates in the manifestation of some aspect of perfection. The courage which men externalize by holding fast to a specific momentum in the face of every attempt to prevent its manifestation is a thing of beauty, a joy to every heart, and most wondrous to behold. The very thought of power in itself brings delight to the hearts of men. The power of the universe depicted in the heavens tells men of that seemingly far-off aspect of God for which their souls hunger, but onto which it appears impossible to draw nigh. Hope, together with the element of faith, has enabled men to release some degree of power into their worlds and to subject it to their control. I just want to make sure we're still live. Indeed. Okay, good. A. Power defined. Now, power has taken many forms. Abuses have marred its use, whereas virtue has enhanced it. Tyrants have exploited it, and politics and religion have been molded around the star of power blazing in the firmament of society. The primary types of power are physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual energy in various forms. There is electrical, chemical, nuclear, elemental, and cosmic power, and there is temporal power consisting of social influences and mass pressures, governmental and religious authorities. Meanwhile, karmic power affects everyone's status, attainment, and progress. All power is interrelated. Some is stored, some is static, some is dynamic, and subject to a rapid decay rate. All power is subject to two primary qualifications under the classification of relativity: divine and human, or cosmic universal and material transitory. The Maltese Cross, emblem of my dedication to the cause of freedom, is a balanced thought form which may be used to illustrate the qualifications of power. As many realize, a cross symbolizes the meeting of two planes of consciousness: the horizontal bar representing the plane of the human consciousness, the plane of the ego, and the vertical bar representing the energies of God descending from the realm of spirit into the quadrants of matter. The center where the two lines intersect is the point, orifice, where the energies of heaven are released to the earth, and in truth it is at this point, which is actually the point of the qualification of power, that great alertness must be maintained by all who use power in its many aspects, including its organic and inorganic forms. The power of speech itself, the power in the spoken word, and the power of the word, whether released by pen or edict of sword, changes the course of history and alters the lives of those affected by its release. Whatever its subsequent use or abuse, the tangled threads of power have always flowed, symbolically and actually, from the orifice of the cross. The Maltese Cross is a symbol of perfect balance, both in the alignment of the four planes of matter and the four cosmic forces thereof, and in the inner and outer expression of God's Spirit within the souls of his own. As such, the Maltese Cross illustrates the drawing forth of light's energy and consciousness from on high through the north arm for the manifestation in the world of form of God's omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence through the west, south, and east arms, respectively. And as we shall soon see, in this cosmic interchange between God and man, the universal light is beamed forth, as above, so below, to the right, to the left, and in the center, in a equilibrium of power, wisdom, and love. Blessed ones, it is easy to complicate that which is simple, but it is often most difficult to simplify that which is really complicated. This I shall attempt for you in this study. Bear in mind that when a child first begins the study of arithmetic, he is dealing with simple sums and the concrete. In his world of counting things, he can little conceive of the intricate threads of logarithms and abstract equations. Man should then realize that the perfection of the soul in God must take into account the fact that so-called cradles of negation in the world of form have been created as classrooms or schools of soul testing where transmutation and noble changes can be effected that will result in an expansion of the flame of freedom, raising every son of liberty into the totality of his identity and divine manhood. In simplifying the understanding concerning the release shown that the bodies of man, for by definition are receptacles of that power. Thus his physical, mental, emotional, and etheric sheaths of consciousness are recipients of the charge of power that is released through the electronic pattern of the Maltese Cross. For the purposes of this study, it is best that we consider the dawn, the beginning of each day, as the arbitrary point of origin for power's release. When self-conscious awareness once again floods the altar of individuality and men begin again to think and to perceive, for this too is an employment of power, but one which is often abused by neglect. Few today are aware of the degree of power which God has conferred upon man through the gift of consciousness. Few are aware that they possess the power of focalization and intensification in the proper exercise of their attention through individual consciousness, nor do they realize that the interpretive and discriminatory action of the God Self enables them to take firm hold of the reins of power, to be in control of their lives, and to be less distracted by the social and karmic responsibilities that are daily thrust upon them. B. Self-dominion, your reins of power. The statement made of old, he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. Proverbs 16:31. Should be understood. Were it so, more adepts and masters would arise in every generation to take the reins of dominion over themselves and their worlds. It is an act of utter compassion for universal law and for universal love for you to obtain dominion over the finite self. When this happens in your life, then happen it shall as the law is made known. You will realize that you cannot remain a novice and still be a master. Although you live in the plane of the human consciousness, you must not be subject to its depredations. Inasmuch as the world is filled, even when housed in a dedicated consciousness, of the sinister force, the devil's workshop, as they say. It behooves the student of deeper truth to recognize that he alone can and must govern his own world through the right use of power. In this sphere of cosmic coexistence, where the energies of the macrocosm and the microcosm flow as one, there is a daily release of great power from the Godhead, and a subsequent abuse of that power by mankind. Some men watch the abuses of others and then respond with an equal or greater abuse of power. Thus they gauge their power train according to the qualifications of power by individuals and society. This is not action, but reaction. Others sometimes consciously and deliberately, and at times thoughtlessly or unconsciously, generate discordant thought forms and auric emanations from their beings through the triggering action of bad habits and momentums. I would like to list some of these abuses of power in order that you might perceive how people become the unwitting tools of subtle qualities of negation and how they take in, amplify, and discharge this nauseous substance into the planetary atmosphere. First, there is boredom, an indifferent state of mind wherein it seems quite profitless to the individual who cannot see beyond to the reality of the next. Boredom is usually the upper level of the downward spiral within the high rise of emotional awareness by Abraham Esther Hicks's emotional guidance system, which has the 22 different levels of emotion, which actually come from that chart and then applied to the idea that it's the same address but a completely different experience depending on which part of the high rise in terms of your emotional states you're actually perceiving your life through. Now, it's very interesting because I had said to Michael Seegers when we were going through the electronic belt and the causal body about how that was connected. And this is tied too with the emotional high rise of awareness. And now that boredom, which is the tipping point, is being spoken of, I am extremely excited. So here we go. It reminds me of England. I love it. First there is boredom, an indifferent state of mind, wherein all seems quite profitless to the individual who cannot see beyond the vanity of his world, of this world to the reality of the next. An enfranchising state, akin to a vacuum. Men denude their souls of vitality. Then there is dissatisfaction, in which men assess their own progress or lack of it, and by dishonesty in self or self-deceit are unwilling to admit their role in fashioning their own weaknesses. Instead, they effect a transfer of responsibility to others, assigning them the blame for their own failures or lack of progress, often carried on at subconscious levels. This ruse of the carnal mind remains the primary cause of personal stagnation. Then there, too, are numerous types of fear. One of its most devastating forms, which I desire to call to your attention, is that which even the sincere sometimes attribute to the Godhead, given men's propensity to fashion their gods after themselves. It is the altogether human quality of whimsy, which stems from a deep-seated insecurity. Although they themselves have a whimsical nature, they cannot bear the thought of being subject to a whimsical God. Therefore, they conclude, for dark and unclear reasons, unknown even to themselves, that their life streams are not in favor with the universe, and that they must withdraw therefrom. In this anxious frame of mind, they may tend toward aggressive forms of rebellion, or their attitude may become one of servility, wherein they easily tolerate feelings of lethargy, depression, and hopelessness. There is the vibration of doubt, which we would also touch upon. Doubt stems from fear and from a lack of real self-knowledge, while self-doubt, as lurking suspicion, colors one's doubts of everyone else. Some who believe themselves to be fearless and in possession of greater knowledge than they in fact have, may not accept the statement I am making. Nevertheless, I shall affirm its truth, and when in the light of greater understanding men will have dispelled their own self-ignorance, their doubts too will fly out the window. But men must allow themselves time enough to achieve this. As the Masters said, in your patience possesses ye your souls. Luke 21:19. Now there are many other traits and influences that we could go into here, but I do not choose to prolong the enumeration of negatives to which mankind are host. Rather, I would point out, on the basis of a thorough analysis of those I have listed, that mankind's abuses of power are created primarily as a result of their ignorance of the laws governing the flow and use of power. Moreover, to the great masses inhabiting the planet, from whom even a rudimentary knowledge of the science of karma has been withheld, it is somewhat difficult to explain the cycles of reincarnation that predestine the return of abused power to the one who has misused it. The horror with which some who profess to be religious view any doctrine that is not approved by the church of their fathers is a millstone about their necks. How unfortunate, for they are to be free from the shackles of an ancient dogma. They must open the doors of their minds without fear and without prejudice. C. Oneness of life, the four lower bodies. Now it must be understood with cherishment that all life is one, and that an abuse of power on the part of any member of the world body has its effect upon all. But by a like token, the correct use of power by to all. Power is energy. Energy stored measured as the sum total of the energy content of all the body cells. When this energy is spent, it becomes necessary to in some way reinfuse the cells with energy in order to renew the power of the body. With new and vital energy when those cells are already clogged with accumulations of negatively qualified substance, residual deposits of power misused through wrong thought and action, is to partially negate the flow of energy into the body. This can cause fatigue or a loss of power, which, if unchecked, eventually results in so-called death, the cessation of flow of life from the presence to the physical form. Consider the value of fleshing out these accumulations by spiritual electronics, and then gradually building up the light in the four lower bodies by the fourfold alchemy of the Maltese Cross and the science of the spoken word. Thus, it is most necessary to understand the relationship of the four lower bodies as you pursue the rebuilding of the temple of man as a wise master builder. The mental body interpenetrates the physical body as water interpenetrates a sponge. Having its own reservoir of power, it is not dependent upon the physical body except as the focal point of distribution of power. Yet the four lower bodies of man are so interrelated that if the mental body is to operate at optimum efficiency, the other three must be in perfect alignment with it and with each other. The densities that the mental body encounters in the physical body, such as the harmful residue of nicotine, drugs, and impure food, or even the substance of fear, doubt, and mental rebellion accumulated from past lives, clog the brain cells and imprison the light of the atom, effectively impeding the free flow of light to the physical consciousness and thereby impairing the function of the mental faculties. When misused, the power of the emotional body becomes the most violent and volatile of the four lower bodies. When agitated by undisciplined feelings, these emotional energies have a tendency to lead men astray in their thinking and in their actions. The flow of power to the mental body is also greatly subject to the power of the etheric, or memory body. In memory's storehouse, the writings of all past actions in present and previous embodiments stand as an electronic record of considerable weight and influence. The power of this record, together with the momentums generated by the misuse of energy, is a subtle pressure that affects the present moment for good or for ill, relatively speaking, unless it is brought under the control of the balancing power of the great God flame within the heart, the immortal flame of power, wisdom, and love. D. The Maltese Cross, symbol of God-controlled power. The Maltese Cross, symbol of the perfect balance of the God flame, as in heaven, so on earth, provides a thought and energy matrix whereby the ill effects of personal and planetary karma can be brought under control and the power of virtue released in their place, that mankind's use of power no longer corrupt life on earth. It has been said that power tends to corrupt and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton to Bishop Mantle Cretan on the 5th of April, 1887, quoted in John Bartlett Comp and Emily Morrison Beck, edition Familiar Quotations, a collection of passages, phrases, and proverbs traced to their sources in ancient and modern literature, 14th edition. Interesting. Oh, there we go. So that quote came from 1887, 100 years before I was born. Power can be used as the bow of the infinite archer to release an arrow of perfection into the heart of man's goal of happiness. As the pursuit of happiness is an acknowledged treasure, let all who would permanently enjoy it ponder the Maltese Cross as a simple thought form through which great truths may be revealed for the blessing of all. Look at the Maltese Cross placed upright before us. We see that the four symmetrical arms extending from the center are triangular in shape, wide at the outside, giving the appearance of a fanning action. The upper or north arm descending to the center resembles the upper vessel of an hourglass. Actually, it's a funnel through which the great energies of God, the power of God, are descending into the cup, chalice of being. The wide opening reminds us of the infinite energies of the source and of God's ability to convey these to man. Therefore, we know that we need not accept creation in any form, whether in receiving or giving the limitless light of cosmos. The point of qualification at the center of the cross indicates that you must always consciously determine within your heart and mind to qualify your God-given energy with the purity of the divine intent and with the virtues of your Christ identity. You need not be weak or weakened when comforted by waves of discordant energy, whether your own or another's, nor is it necessary for you to be rude in your rebuttal of human error, for it is not the person, but the impersonal energy personally misdirected that must be challenged. Picture of the Maltese Cross. Are you able to do so? The Maltese Cross, focus of the distribution of energy from spirit to matter. The macrocosm, day side of life, energies of spirit descend through the north arm, which is white. The orifice or nexus of conscious being is a point of qualification that comes after, to then enter the east or positive arm, which is love and pink. The south arm is wisdom, which is yellow, and the west arm or negative arm is power or blue, as above, so below. These are the energies of spirit coalesce as matter through the three lower arms, a microcosm, night side of life, to the macrocosm of the whole experience of life. The Maltese Cross symbol of the perfect balance of the God flame, as in heaven, so on earth, provides a thought and energy matrix, whereby the ill effects of personal and planetary karma can be brought under control and the power of virtue released in their place, that mankind's use of power might no longer corrupt life on earth. Well, that's beautiful. That'd be nice. Won't that be nice? For that is what we are calling for. So we've got 8 more minutes until Chantal's going to join me. Woo, can we do it? Yes, because that'll take us up to wisdom, which we're getting ahead anyway, but I wanted to read the Wayshowers with Jesus and Saint Germain, so that's exciting. Therefore, establish yourself in a firm, unyielding consciousness that rejects evil as the lie of man's misqualification, and as you breathe in the essence of the sacred fire, flower of power, determined to strip that lie of its negative power manifesting as thorns of abuse. It must be recognized that when the energy action descends from God to man through the upper arm, narrowing through the funnel to flow into the crucible of being at the point of the cross, it passes through the nexus and fans out into the three lower triangles to manifest as power, wisdom, and love in the world of material form. Thus, the infinite energies of God are molded by the qualifications of man's attention focused at the heart of the cross, the seat of his conscious mind. By this means, power congeals in the physical world, taking the form of the thoughts, the feelings, the acts, and the spoken word of man, the release of its potential being entirely dependent on the motivation and the will of his consciousness. The balance between the upper arm, which receives the energies of spirit, and the three lower arms, through which spirit's energies coalesce both in and as matter, provides for the balanced manifestation of God's power, as above, so below, from the planes of primary causation to the physical effect, as it is taught in the Hermetic science. If man's qualification of his quotient of spiritual energy released over the crystal cord from the I am presence to the heart chakra were retained in purity from the moment it entered the crucible of his consciousness, all that is in manifestation in the microcosm would reflect the perfection of the macrocosm. Think of that. The energies of the three lower arms fanning out in a balanced action from the center of the Maltese from the plane of pure being into the form, or action, phase of the threefold flame. Power by itself in the left arm retains the negative polarity unless and until it is qualified with the positive polarity of divine love in the right arm. Ponder well this statement. Now the left arm of the cross denotes the negative or minus charge of spiritual energy qualified by the blue. The right arm denotes the positive or plus charge qualified by the pink flame of love, and the lower arm denoting the central axis of the plus and minus fling is qualified by the golden flame of illumination, which imbues both the positive and negative poles with wisdom's God direction and purpose. Therefore, all that is below in the microcosm is intended to be a threefold manifestation of the sacred fire that descends from above in the macrocosm. The energy released from the Godhead, the day star from on high. 2 Peter 1:19. The lodestone of power, or the I am presence, scintillating in the octaves of perfection immediately upon entering the lower octave, assumes the negative pole of being in what is called the night side of manifestation. This is the minus side of life, where the plus fling of potential released from spirit enters into material qualification. The energies garnered by spirit, when preceded by right thought in the left arm, gain the impetus for God virtue by the power of love's cohesion and attraction as they are released into action through the right arm. This left-right push-pull action can be illustrated through the principle of the slingshot, wherein the stone in the sling is withdrawn from the Y in a negative pull in order to secure the necessary impetus of power to drive home the shot through a positive release. In the first chapter of Genesis, that the Lord God the light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. Genesis 1:16. The north arm of the cross represents the day side of being, and the three lower arms the night side. The left arm of the Maltese Cross, being the negative arm of the Trinity in form, is itself symbolical of the negative side of life, in which the three lower arms are suspended. Then, too, it is the left arm that denotes the physical nature of man as a cradle or crucible onto which God pours power as a condensation of the fury intensity of his light. This he does in the hope that man will rise above that cradle crucible and transcend the world of experience which the alchemist perceives as the night side of life, a temporal densification of spirit, a laboratory in matter, where he is obliged to prove the scientific laws of being in order to return to the permanent abode of spirit. It is out of the dense spheres of this world of experience, which the Hindus refer to as the world of Maya, that the soul of man must rise, purified and made white, into the purity of the great God flame of his being. The Maltese Cross has another significance. When the perfect integration of God and man is complete, there is a sunburst effect emitting light from the dull of allness at the dot symbolical of individuality. There is matter, a divine oneness of all planes, a union of filling the spirals of the Alpha and Omega. The Omega. Through the sacred heart of the soul, wed to the universal Christ in the alchemical marriage, the light is come, the light does shine. God is in truth the all-in-one, not only in principle but also in practical application. For this God, whose Christ, as Paul said, is all and in all, is the all in all within the individualized manifestation made in his image and likeness. COL. So I don't know what COL is supposed to be. If somebody is more religious, that could help with the COL 3:11, 1 COR 15:28, Genesis 1:26-27. If you could clarify what call and core, that would be helpful. We got 1 minute and we're almost there. That's so exciting. Wow. Okay. Thus is the fullness of God's kingdom conferred upon his sons and daughter. Thus, through the pattern of the Maltese Cross, is the concept of thine is the power realized. God's power as his light, energy, consciousness is then entrusted to every man, and it is in the right use of this power in every way, according to the spiritual physical laws of alchemy, which I herewith declare to you in part, leaving the rest to your mystical communion with cosmos. And surely come to understand more of the universe and obtain the victory of eternal life. I realize that my writings on alchemy were a disappointment to some students because of expectation. Some actually became obsessed with the idea that I would give them some form of thaumaturgical formula whereby upon making certain Kabbalistic the secret word or words, precious stones, and even money would materialize in their hands as if out of thin air. I doubt not that if this were to be conferred upon all, it would be the greatest abuse of power conceivable, both on my part and on the part of the universe itself. For if men think that they have karmic responsibilities in the use of that power, which they already have, let them consider for a moment what responsibilities they should have if their power were increased. Call not so much for an increase of power, a better understanding of how to use that power which you already have, and observe how the universe, in all of its great wisdom, bursting with desire to give you the vital freshness of being, will confer upon you by direct apprehension those alchemical secrets which will assure you not a continuing abuse, but a correct and glorious use of the power of God unto salvation for all. Unto salvation for all. Peace be with you as I join you in the release of greater understanding concerning your wise dominion of illumination's flame. Your obedient friend of freedom, Saint Germain. It is 2 minutes after, and I do not yet see Chantel. So I will message and see. So you Instagram. This is the end for you. Thank you for tuning in today, and please do tune in again soon. Fun, 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 fun. It is true, we're done on this platform. Now we've got to wait for Chantel, please, my friend. I hope you will come here for us to understand that it is all connected here. So we go, Saint Germain and Jesus Christ, as wayshowers of the power. How interesting that is, I say to you. It's true that you, Jesus Christ, wayshowers of the Aquarian age, wayshowers of the Aquarian age. It's true that you will do what you need to. I hope that you Magna Carta next. Come and learn with us. Come and learn with us. And join the fun. It's time for us to understand and we'll be what we need it to be. Darling, where are you? Oh, Chantal, where are you, my friend? Is it not working? That would be a shame. I tagged you. Sorry. Needed my phone. I will send the link. I tagged you in. Yep, I did. I did. It's true. Yes, I did. Yes. But, sorry. Sue? Here we go. She's on her way. That's exciting. She was not. Oh, why is it pausing? All right, there we go. Chantal! Hello, darling. How are you?
Good, you?
Awesome. I'm so sorry for that. I just carried on with the Wayshowers of the Aquarian age reading. So we've been kind of like waiting for you for a few minutes over there. So apologies for not getting you the link sooner. But thank you for tuning in and for co-hosting today with me. My God, you didn't hear obviously what was just read.
Nope.
Chantal, Saint Germain on Alchemy, like this dude right here channeled what's in here, and it's literally talking about the spiritual solution to what is needing to happen right now. And then Stephen yesterday had sent me a link about the Magna Carta, and it was information that ultimately I said, okay, we've got to watch this, but we really ultimately need to just kind of show other people too, because we can't just be the reservoirs of all of this great truth and insights and information. So we really wanted to watch it together, so it's not each of us independently watching the thing that both of us need to ultimately watch. And then we also wanted to be able to share it with other people too. So I'm just pulling up Stephen's message. Is there anything that you wanted to share or say before we get started with the video today, Chantal?
No, I am just going to try to jump over onto my laptop. Zoom keeps disappearing off of it, which drives me insane. So I have to go into email and just find a random Zoom link to get it to come back on. So that's why I keep having to start on my phone. So I'm just going to fiddle here as well while you fiddle there.
Yeah. Okay. That's perfect. That is actually a reminder this morning before I was reading Saint Germain on Alchemy with the Wayshowers of the Aquarian age and power, and also talking about the Maltese Cross, of which we are at the center point. And then today's blog that I did, which is in a new 55-day series, it was actually talking about the gateway process, which is a CIA report that talks about how we are actually at the center of both a white and black hole. And we're essentially like the portal that can really open ourselves to our potential if we're willing to understand who we truly are. And so with that being said, ultimately, there is a video that we're going to watch that just is another tool for us to be able to decide how we're going to use it. And so that is what is going to happen now. And I'm grateful that I'm not doing it alone. So thank you, Chantal, for being willing to continually show up and challenge my thinking and my leadership and everything that I am doing. It's only a 4-minute video.
Oh, really?
Well, that was quick. We can watch a few other ones then.
Yeah.
This is the story of an 800-year-old medieval document known as Magna Carta, or the Great Charter. It's one of the most famous documents in the world. But how did this old piece of parchment become such a powerful symbol of our rights and freedoms? Magna Carta was granted in 1215 and established for the first time that everyone, even the king, had to obey the law. When Magna Carta was printed for the first time, it became the first law that all English lawyers studied. But many people didn't realize its significance. Shakespeare wrote a play about King John in which he failed to mention Magna Carta. In the 1600s, English lawyers used Magna Carta to challenge King Charles I. At this time, the king could ignore Parliament and imprison anyone who opposed him. Inspired by Magna Carta, Sir Edward Coke wrote the Petition of Right, which set out to limit the king's powers. Around the same time, Magna Carta was taken overseas to America by the first British settlers. Many American colonies based their own laws on Magna Carta. Then, in the 1770s, the Americans fought for independence from Britain. Magna Carta became a symbol of American liberty, and its principles were echoed in the Declaration of Independence.
So, well, I think that there's actually some spiritual interference going on, given the nature of what these
and the bill
hold in themselves. And what I also realized is that for those who are watching over on YouTube, you can't actually see the video. So I'm just going to actually pop over there real quick. And so hello to both of you who are there. And then just so you're aware, the link that we are actually watching is here. So there we go. And now we're going to jump back over and keep watching this. We're at 1 minute and 38 seconds. If you're wanting to see the video, it says on the screen, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal.
Of rights. In 18th century Britain, Magna Carta was used to protest against the censorship of the press. At this time, people could be imprisoned without trial for criticizing the king. When newspaper publisher John Wilkes was arrested...
Darn it. All right, catch up, computer. I'm asking it to do a lot, and sometimes when we ask someone to do a lot and too much all at once, it's kind of actually like in The Alchemist, where the camel driver says that he trusts a horse more than a camel because a camel can walk for thousands of miles. It's okay. A camel can walk thousands of miles and then suddenly drop dead and keel over. Whereas a horse will let you know it's tired gradually. So my computer is letting me know gradually, but also what I was about to say and then trailed off onto something else, which I have a tendency to do. So I apologize for being a bit of a magpie, and yet that is who I am. So it is what it is. But ultimately, I've lost my train of thought because I was then trying to justify, and I lost it. Chantal, what are you thinking? You're muted because I can only ask you to unmute. You have to unmute yourself.
I was distracted by all of the glitching and then my horrible noise when I switched from my phone to my computer.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't really hear very much of that. There was a lot of glitching.
Fair. Well, this is about spiritual interference. And so Michael and I were actually we recorded a video back in September that I posted on spiritual warfare and the nature of evil that I was watching this morning, which was what I was going to say twice already and got distracted away from. So there's a lot of power in that episode, and I would really encourage, if you're willing, to go and check that out. He even introduces Archangel Michael, and he starts talking about a lot of the things that we go deeper into now that we're 13 episodes in already. And we've got multiple bonuses too. So all of that is exceptional. And I believe that we have additional tools when we actually use the spiritual ones that are available to us, that our ancestors left us, just like they did the Magna Carta too. And then I have this, taking it an extra step, that I'm just going to put out there and say that if reincarnation is real, and if energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only displaced, then essentially we could have actually been the ones that were there when the barons surrounded King John and said, you're going to put in a people's protection clause or you're not going to survive. And that was when then the king became equal to the law. So that when we stood into court, we then challenged the law. We did this for ourselves, I believe. I believe that we were them and now we're us. And we're being called to take a stand the way that they had to, and that many others have had to do in the way up till now too. And back in the day, they have called on the Magna Carta a series of times, at least 4 or 5. So we need to find out the circumstances around those to let you know that this is not a first. This Article 61 of the 1215 Magna Carta summoning, which is not the best word for it, because instead we can say call forth, because to summon is to be connected with the black magic that we automatically do if we just use the tools that have been handed readily to us. But the things that we have to search for and dig for oftentimes are where the clues are hidden, because that's where the true gold is stored. Anything to add on to that, sister?
No.
You do. I know you do. You have so much value to offer, but you don't have to do it right now in this moment. I just thank you for being you. So here we go. Get back. We're going to get back to
Arrested for insulting King George III, he used Magna Carta to fight for his freedom. He claimed that ancient English liberties were under threat. Wilkes's campaign showed Magna Carta on everything from posters to teapots. You could say that Magna Carta went viral. In the 1800s, very few people had the right to vote in Britain. A nationwide movement of working people known as the Chartists, inspired by Magna Carta, created a people's charter to fight for all men to have the vote. Then, in the early 1900s, the suffragettes used Magna Carta to argue that all women should have the right to vote too. Increasingly, people across the empire argued for rights equal to those of British citizens. Gandhi fought successfully for greater freedom of Indian settlers in South Africa. He described the resulting document as the Magna Carta of our liberty in this land. In his famous speech from the dock, Nelson Mandela declared his admiration for Magna Carta and for Western democracy, which he contrasted with the oppressive South African regime. Perhaps the most significant influence of Magna Carta today is the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Written after the atrocities of World War II, the Declaration states that people around the world are protected by fundamental human rights, regardless of their citizenship, race, gender, or beliefs. Eleanor Roosevelt famously said that the Declaration may well become the international Magna Carta of all men everywhere. Although very few of Magna Carta's original clauses remain valid in English law, it continues to inspire people worldwide. Not a bad legacy for an 800-year-old document.
So that is aligned to the idea that the whole of the Magna Carta is not still valid, which is something that we're not specifically stuck on either. But we were given another video that we're going to show, which is the legal significance of the Magna Carta. And these have been provided to us by Stephen Martin. So he was sending these to me for me to review, and then I was obviously going to share them with Chantal. And so now I just say, well, hey, let's just watch it all together. So here we go. Okay.
There are really only 3 clauses of the original Magna Carta that are still part of English law today, and they're written in...
So this is the British Library.
In such broad terms that the courts can't really interpret them. They're not regarded as justiciable. Now, some people have tried. They give Magna Carta magic powers. There were protesters camped outside St. Paul's Cathedral in the winter of 2011-2012, and one of them claimed descent from one of King's. He said that he was a Magna Carta heir and he was therefore exempted from complying with the ordinary law. Well, the court said that Chapter 29, with its requirement that the state proceeds according to law, is seen as the historical foundation for the rule of law in England, but it doesn't apply in this case. I don't think that Magna Carta does stand up very well to modern statutory interpretation. Take the most famous clause of all, no free man shall be imprisoned, and so on. Well, what's a free man? Does it include women? It probably does, because that's what the Interpretation Act says. Does it include people who are not free, whatever that may mean in modern law? Well, it probably does, because that's what the Human Rights Act says. So it probably means that nobody can be convicted or punished except by the law of the land. But we know that anyway. We would have that law without Magna Carta, so it doesn't really add very much. Magna Carta is important because of what it stands for more than what it says. Take Lord Bingham, one of the most distinguished judges of recent times. He said the significance of Magna Carta lay not only in what it actually said, but perhaps to an even greater extent in what later generations claimed and believed he had said. Sometimes, he said, the myth is more important than the actuality. I think King John would have been surprised that the charter he sealed at Runnymede 800 years ago has become such a powerful and influential document. It was one of many charters around at the time. It was annulled within a couple of months because it had been extracted by duress. Only a few sentences from it remain on the statute book. But because of what it stands for, it is important. The themes that we have derived from it, perhaps even read into it, are so fundamental that I think we're right and fully entitled to be celebrating it today.
We're entitled because we have the title that we need to be able to stand as sovereign men and women, free men and women, natural men and women, common law men and women, which has more power than the fictitious ones that are hired to uphold the truth that is perpetuated by a law book that is determined what goes into it by the same people that benefit from the exacting of power from it. We have to understand there is a level of corruption in indoctrination because the ones who are perpetuating mistruths, just in the same way that you noticed that his voice at pause, it changed in the dynamic of it because there was potential mistruth being shared. Not that he was even aware of it specifically, because based on the books that he's studied, that may be true for him, but the technology showed me what I was feeling within me, and you can say different if you feel that to be the way too. But ultimately, you don't, 10 weeks after you have a king basically sign a document to include a People's Protection Clause to say that if he was being corrupt, that he could be held personally accountable and have a gallows punishment and personal asset stripping. And then 10 weeks later, the Pope doesn't like the fact that, or the priest doesn't like the fact that he lost his sovereign ability to reign, which means that he's the top dog in the lands. And then suddenly they change it because it wasn't convenient for the king to have signed a document that rescinded his power to the same level of his brethren he is trying to rule and needs to feel like he is superior to, which then elevated all of these power dynamics, which is exactly and precisely the reason that right before this, I literally read about power from a spiritual perspective and the fact that you can't actually solve something with the tools that we have from this perspective, because you can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it in the first place. We have to become bigger than our problems. We have to call in the ones that came before us. We have to say, okay, so this guy is proposing truth from his perspective, but who's fact checking the fact checkers? Who's fact checking the ones that work for the British Library, which is essentially the museum of all of the world's stolen documents that certain people have been paid a lot of money to be able to go and access and have an elite title or an exclusive title to be able to do so. And then they purport truth that's expected to be upheld as law, just the same way as all of these fictitious political characters are currently mandating masking, which is not healthy. They're mandating social distancing, and what it actually is physical distancing, except for they're socializing us to be afraid of the social element instead of the physical. Like, this pandemic is a pandemic that is committed with treason behind closed doors, and we just want to get access to the truth. So we do these to try to find truth. But how do we find truth when people are so indoctrinated by their own BS that they can't even see that they are oblivious to the lies in what is obvious once you have the evil taken off, which is simply the energetic veil of deception. That is where 90% of what is good is tainted by 10% that isn't, that we don't know how to pull out. And so then what? We just don't like any of it. Or we believe all of it and then fall to the sins included therein. I don't know how valuable those references were, to be fair. Because that's not basically what we've been hearing on these summits that we've been hosting. We've hosted 8 of now, Chantal, is that they're going to say it's not true because it's not convenient to their narrative. Chantal, what's it like for you to be co-hosting the summits and to be going through the process of trying to reclaim your sovereignty with me, and then to be in all of these opportunities to see what is true?
Very interesting. It's very intimidating at times. It's a lot of information. You don't know what's true, what's not. And honestly, how would we ever know if it was true with the amount of lies they spew everywhere? Everything is up for debate, honestly. But nobody is having the debate. Everybody's just hiding.
We are.
Behind their masks and behind what they're told to do by those who are supposedly in charge.
Ugh. The insanity of what is going on, people. It's mind-blowing, which is why we are teaming up, and we're saying that...
You froze.
Of course. Oh. Spiritual interference, man. Spiritual warfare. I swear, we need to watch that video. Are you are you open to actually watch Spiritual Warfare, the video with Michael Seegers and I? Like, we recorded it back in September. Would you be open to watching a piece on that, or do you want to watch more Magna Carta stuff?
Sorry, I had to get him to stop making sounds in the background.
Yeah.
How long is it?
Well, we could just only watch a little piece of it, because basically I feel like wherever I kind of left off, if we watched even like just like up to 5 minutes of just like one piece of it and then share a perspective.
Yeah, just because I have to bring Connor out to his buddies at 1. So
yeah, brilliant. Oh, that's fun. Okay, yeah, we'll watch. I'm gonna log us back in to the I'm just gonna go over onto. Okay, because I was watching it before this morning because I don't remember everything that was covered in it, to be honest. And
yeah,
it was so long ago, and there's been so much covered since, and so much information. It's just like, how do you even remember what we did, you know?
Yeah, that's the issue, is that you have to watch it over and over and over and really get everything in your head. And it's really hard to do that when there's so many different narratives. There's so many different, like, oh, no, it's this. It's like this. No, it's like this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm listening, but I'm going to go make a tea.
Beautiful. Please. Thank you. All right. So we're going to, Emily Sandy. She has a fantastic voice. All right, so the Michael and Laura show has a playlist, and hopefully it just goes directly to Spiritual Warfare. No, it took us to the science of the spoken word, because the spoken word is the sword. I wanted to take us to Spiritual Warfare and the nature of evil, and also show you that this playlist exists. And
communicating with the Creator and finding ways to spend time in prayer, or using invocations like the simple call to Archangel Michael. Or
I want, before the end of this, because during these times, especially as the old paradigm falls and we're called to create a new one that will serve us and find flow, and big truths are brought to the surface, and it horrifies and completely defiles who a lot of us were trained to believe that we are as a people and as individuals within that collective. Mental health has a huge rise in terms of the crises that is now upon us, and there is not, from my experience, the help that is suggested is there within the mental health system, because that is only addressing one aspect unless you have a really great teacher. And there are many great light that from my own experience. But I mention this because what I suspect is going to be happening, and what already is happening with the quarantine that is currently in place and that is likely to come in the fall when we enter into what I've heard will be a 6-month lockdown, is that suicide rates are going up big time already, and are going to way more when the atrocities to the surface in a bigger way. And I don't say all of this to propagate the fear, as so many of the media outlets currently do, but I say it because there is actually an entity that brings suicide into the awareness of people as a viable option, that many who are listening or watching this now may have personally experienced, and certainly all of us have experienced someone else go through. And so if you would speak into the entity of suicide as part of this conversation about spiritual warfare, I feel it would be incredibly beneficial now as much as ever.
that's an interesting subject. I'm sure most people are familiar with the concept of exorcisms. And I'm sure there's a lot of question about, is that stuff real? And if so, what's going on there? And demonic possession does exist, and there are entities of all kinds. There are thousands of different types of entities that, for the most part, we don't see. We see the effect of them as the behaviors of people appear to be unhealthy. That is largely due to entities. And of the types of entities that exist, the suicide entity is one of the most dangerous, and it works in conjunction with the gambling entity, and it works in conjunction with drug and alcohol entities. There's an entity involved in smoking. The reason that people have such a problem with nicotine addiction is a lot more to do with the nicotine entity than actually with the chemistry of nicotine itself. And so these entities are feeding off of the energy of the individual who is partaking of the substance. And there are entities of depression. There are entities of lust. All destructive behaviors can be seen as rooted in behavior, the influence of entities. And so these are tools of dark forces that have been specifically created to steal the light that constantly pours through us and to keep us subjugated and in a lower consciousness where we are simply tools and workers for an elite that lives off our effort. That is not just the suicide entity, but all mental disease is rooted in entities. And the understanding is helpful that everything that exists, whether it's appearing to be physical matter or energy, physical energy, spiritual energy, everything that exists is consciousness. Consciousness is the fabric of the universe. And so these entities are themselves conscious. They have a particular type of consciousness. And the idea that suicide is a way out or is a solution is absolutely false, because where you end up being when this physical vehicle is put down, you continue to exist, but you will be existing in a realm with an equivalent vibration to what you were experiencing. So the fear, the despair, the whatever that you were experiencing, you're going to now be in a realm that is that very vibration. And it's a very, very distressing condition to be in. And then by law, by karmic law, you will be required to re-embody immediately. Normally, people have a waiting period between lifetimes. Suicides have to come back right away. And so you'll be realizing that you have to come back into a condition of consciousness that is at least equal to the one that you left, because you have to master that challenge. And likely the conditions will be more uncomfortable and the challenge will be greater. And so
especially if we don't do anything. So what was that like?
I just got chills. It's like, oh, you have to, yeah, that would make sense though, that you would have to come back right away.
Yeah.
Learn your lesson.
Yeah. Well, it's like the universe gives us teachers, and it's just like we either get the feather teacher and it's just light brushing, and then we get the wool teacher that it's just like it's a bit more coarse, but it's not too bad. And then we get the sandpaper where that would really take off some skin over time. And then we get to the like car starting to run us over kind of perspective. And then we get the bus, and it's like you don't come back from a bus the same way you do a feather or even a sandpaper teacher.
Oh, interesting. I'd like to watch that whole video.
Yeah? Okay, awesome. Well, do you want to watch the we'll just watch the end of, or the end-ish, and then we can go back.
Well, and I can watch it on my own, another, that side. It doesn't matter to me.
It's a horrific error And we need to find ways to embrace our support systems, our community, our whatever that we have around us, and seek help and move through that crisis and become stronger, because it's not an option to find a quick exit. It just is not.
Unfortunately, the system in place currently to support people with mental dis-ease, cellular disharmony on the mental plane, is not equipped to actually help people to the level that is required, which is the reason that tuning into spiritual practices and creating a spiritual practice that supports and reminds us of the essence within is so important now. It is not a fight for humanity. It is a fight for humanity, but it is not a fight to be fought by humans alone.
Yes, absolutely.
So on that note, Michael, I would love to end this first podcast of the Peaceful Inner Warriors podcast. I would like to end this with asking you for your definition of what it means to be a warrior.
I would say that a warrior is somebody that takes a stand for truth and justice and is not willing to compromise their integrity, and that they honor that throughout their life.
Thank you. And certainly you are someone who has done that in my experience of you. And I would love, if anyone would be interested in connecting with Michael, you can do so through email, michael@shambhala-temple-of-light.com, and I will post that below so that you are able to connect and reach out and know that you are not alone. And if you have questions around what it means to be a spiritual being, having a human experience, to know you are not alone in that, and that we are all doing our best, and that it is a climb of a mountaintop with many peaks. And ultimately, the best way to scale a mountain is to find fellow climbers who have went up higher and can offer insights and advice as to how to maneuver the next peak. And then the valley that comes from reaching that level of attainment. There is an equal and opposite to everything in this universe of polarity, and understanding the foundation of the fact that spiritual warfare and e-veil truly is as real as what we are. And so therefore we are not alone, and we have supports, and Michael Seegers is definitely one I'm grateful to have connected with in this lifetime, and I look forward to bringing more to you with Michael. We're going to be doing a series that will be posted to YouTube for as long as that platform is willing to house us, and we will do our best to continue shining light in this dark space. So thank you very much for tuning in today. Is the end of our first podcast.
Thank you.
Do you see the energetic difference in who I was back in September when we recorded that compared to who I am now, even?
Yep.
It's just like we changed. The journey changed. So they say that the best way that we can actually build a business is to help who we were 2 years ago. So to just actually consider who we were 2 years ago and what the challenges that we were going through were then. And then we know that we can help that person because we were that person. And now we're this person who gained all of the insights that the journey took us through. And I say that at 11:44 too. So take a hint, my friend, who is watching, and the one in the screen too, because ultimately we have so much value to offer. The problem is that we have forgot that dreams are made a few sizes too big so that we can grow into them. So we don't have to show up already feeling like we are exactly the size of the dream that we have. Because when I tried to do that and say, I'm an ambassador for peace, I wound up in the loony bin for 2.5 weeks and found out what the system's really like. And I wouldn't recommend that. And I wouldn't recommend the craziness of everything that went into it leading up to it either. But at the same time, I couldn't have reproduced that if I had tried, because the universe is magical. And when we learn to ride the magic of the moment, sometimes our life just becomes so full of blessings that the outside world of people that are on the cog in the wheel don't understand, because it's like, I just have to do the same thing that I did yesterday, 5 days a week, except for the 2 days when I can do my own thing and call those my day. And then there's really actually not, because then I have everything that goes into real life, which is always full anyway. And then I go back and repeat Groundhog Day the other 5 days of the week until then I get to end being weak and then start another week, which is symbolically significant for how we've been programmed. And that even falls in alignment with social distancing instead of physical distancing, being about, we're taught to be afraid of social interaction because we're powerful when we're together. Far more powerful when it's Chantal and I and Caleb in the back. It's like the kids in the back, she's got a family. She's not one. That is a mother right there. And if we want to change the world, it is the mothers that we must reach. But the way that we reach the mothers is through the children. And these children are being so separated. They're being conditioned and indoctrinated into fear. It's being encouraged for them to wear a mask. What does that mean from a self-image perspective?
It's not encouraged, it's enforced.
You're struggling to find how to actually get your kids exempted because of the implications. Like Connor was saying about it being hard for him to breathe and needing to take his mask off to get a few deep breaths before he had to go back in to his mask.
Yeah. And they yell at him when he does that. And they also force him to run in the gym with the mask on.
Yeah, you said he had to do 2 laps of the gym with a bloody mask. Are you kidding me? Like, what did you say it was? Child abuse.
Yeah, it's child abuse. It is. 100%.
Hello, Stockholm Syndrome. Like, do you love your abuser so much that you think that they're doing right by us to mask children that are perfectly healthy and turn them into patients, which is exactly what's happening? And what it's also saying is that they're willing to comply with the mainstream narrative. Go, sister. I thought I saw you unmute yourself, and it was like, hey, if you got something to say, you do it.
I muted it myself because he's in the kitchen making breakfast, and it can get noisy.
Hey, man, you got a man making breakfast.
Yeah.
Well done. That's awesome. But truly, and hello, Caleb, and thank you for being the man in the back who supports your woman to do what she needs to do in order to bring the information that the whole family gain access to back. And whether you agree with it or not, thank you for being willing to stand and be the support that helps give her a rock, because you really matter. And truly, like, the man behind or the woman behind the man or woman on the screen, like, you matter. And the ones that are in the supportive roles don't often have that acknowledgement made. So I want you to know, if you're somebody watching this who typically stands behind and maybe doesn't say as much as what you think until you're off camera, and then you can kind of let the truth out because you feel like you're able to be your authentic self in that moment. It's like, thank you for doing it regardless of the acknowledgement that you get, the praise that you get, the pay that you get. Thank you for being willing to raise our next generation, to the mothers, to the fathers, to the parents that are doing your very best. And then to also understand that we have created a world where we expect our partner to be our everything. They got to be our best friend, our lover, our provider, our house cleaner, our partner watcher, of Netflix and all the series that we binge together or that we're told is the thing that couples are supposed to do, which is just making our mind mushy. Like what Hulu in their ads even talk about, when there's literally this reptilian creature coming out of Alec Baldwin's jumpsuit or his suit that he wears as a badge of self-esteem, because that's what our self-image ultimately is. And these masks are part of that. Like, don't you understand? I'm going to show you the only mask that I said I would wear when they first brought it out. And I didn't want to lose my job so early in the game, so I didn't. But I was going to wear this to work and say, okay, you want me masked? I'll do it.
Oh, that's funny.
That was what I was going to do, but I didn't think it'd be a real big hit. But I lost my job anyway because I won't wear a mask, except for what I do. And I say the joke of it, except for if it's necessary. Like if you're actually sick, wear a mask.
Yes. If you're sick, don't go to work. Take the time. Your body's telling you you're supposed to take a break.
Right? Or it's telling you that you're going through ascension symptoms, which have the same effect of a cold, because when our body is changing its cellular density and the composition of it, because we've literally been experiencing an upgrade in our DNA from what I've heard, in terms of creating us to be more crystalline or to have our DNA activated, which Michael has corrected me and said that that is false hierarchy, which is how we become aware of what's true and what's not. But then how do we really know unless we actually learn to trust the intuition that is the teacher our soul hired ahead of time to come here and advise us through the journey that many of us get lost in the way of. And then suicide can feel like the option. It's just like, I'm masked, my children are masked, they're turning the whole world into this masked fiesta of craziness and insanity. And it's like, I don't want to play this game, I'll just come back next time. Well, my friend, let me tell you the realization that I've come to recently, and it's been ongoing, but more so even now, is that if reincarnation is true, and that we don't just become a groundhog on the side of the road, like I know some people believe that we do. If there is more to life than just that, what I believe, if in fact suicide means that we come right back, we then, and the fact that I'm rhyming this cohesively is not surprising when you understand it's not me, it's just coming through. So here we go. Take it for what it means to you, leave what doesn't resonate, but pay attention to what you do feel, because ultimately truth vibrates in a certain way that when you're on that level, you feel it. And if reincarnation means that energy will be recycled, just like the steam out of a kettle that ultimately gets eventually recycled and recirculated into the rain cloud that then sends that water back down to the ground to become the water that gets put back into the kettle, eventually over time, so that the process completes itself. If energy cannot be created nor destroyed, only displaced and moved, ultimately what it means is that if we try to get out of the game now, what we are doing is actually committing to come back to pay for the consequences of our choice to do nothing now. Because then our soul, whether we commit suicide now, early, or in whenever that happens, or, and I say this because it's a perspective that I'm only realizing in this moment, in fact, but if we actually die before we die, by not living while we're here, what we're doing is kicking both ends out of the grave to just walk a rut until then they just have to put those ends in and the top on and the dirt over top, and then you're done. But what if what our choice in this moment is to define where humanity will go, and to know that if we take experimental products into our body that have the potentiality to change our DNA away, then that is when we lose the authority to own property, which includes our children and our families. And we've been raised in a culture that turns the toxic nuclear model into exactly that. because it's about community, which is why women need to band together, which is precisely why the seeds were planted in between us, so that women become a threat. And it's just like, well, she looking at my man or partner, or looking at what I got, or all of those things that happen between women, and then the cat fights, and then, you know, somebody walks into a store and one goes this way and the other goes that way as soon as they see them. And it's like, we live in a small town, man. And it's not just a small town. We live in a small, bloody world. And it doesn't need to be bloody unless we choose to allow that to be the way that we continue to rule. Because for years, war, pain, fear, trauma, drama, victimhood have been what have been planted into the seeds of our heritage. And what we have to understand is that those are patterns. And patterns overlay one another, because all time is happening right now. Which is why when your soul comes back, it'll actually still be in the now moment, just whenever that is, paying for the consequences of your choices now. And over in China, for instance, you can become a slave or a prisoner simply because your grandfather stole a loaf of bread to feed the family. And you can live that karmic cycle out yourself, or you can understand we only have to transmute 51% of our karma while we're here in this lifetime to become an ascended master, and that's what each of us came here to do. And one of the tools that we've been exploring is Article 61 of the Magna Carta 1215, because that is said to be when the barons actually enacted the only law, which is the law of one, or the rule of law. And when we actually returned to being natural men and women, and to understand that trauma and woundology was actually implanted into the people to make sure that the natural men and women forgot their own power. Why do you think the Aboriginal people, or the Native people, or whatever label you want to put on the people that were here before their lands were overtaken, when they didn't think land was actually ownable? And so they didn't think that was a threat until then they found that it was taken from them by a pen and crown that then said, oh, you must bow down to me or else you get locked up. And we're talking about, made me want to say the F word, because of in China with all the women lined up to receive the seed of the one that was going to change her by making her a mother she couldn't keep the baby of. For instance, we were having that conversation yesterday, and it would perfectly rhymed in flow, except for it would have been a naughty no-no, so that didn't happen. But my point, my point is we're at a real turning point in history, and we women need to get over ourselves to band together. We need to stop fighting and bickering and trying to be better than, or to say, you know, how do I look compared to somebody else? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you can see of we on the screen right now in this moment, so much as what we say and what we imbue with the vibration. Look how our energy is changing. The screen, the lights, the change. Woo! It's all happening simply because that's how the universe will speak with you if you're listening. And if you choose not to, that's your choice too. But you've been given the clues. You've been given the tools. You've been given the signs, the symbols, the omens. I read you The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. He wrote it before I did that. You chose whether to listen, whether to read it yourself. You chose what to fill into your consciousness. How's it serving you?
I enjoyed that book. I read it as well. It was a good one.
What was your favorite part?
Well, that was like 6 months ago. More the realizations that I had, not any part of the book. I just enjoyed realizing that, yeah, you create your world. You are the creator.
We are. We are the powerful creator of our world. And right now we are being called to create a world together. That is not the new world order that everyone is being conditioned to fear, which only gives our energy there. But instead we are being called to create the now moment, which is the new orderly world. And so that is why on Thursdays, Chantel and I co-host the Peaceful Inner Warriors United Lawfully Organized Summit at 4 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So please do come out and join us on the next one. And we talk about truth. We talk about the tools that we have access to that will help us win a spiritual war that is being fought with a pen and also our energy, all unspoken until it is brought to attention. And also then when we call the ones who are making those decisions responsible for their choice, we are calling the ones that are committing treason to understand that they're on notice. So if it's you who is participating in masking Chantel's children, for instance, watch out, because you'll be put on notice that what you're participating in is corrupt, and you know it. And then if you fail to comply, you'll be held personally responsible for participating in what is clearly treasonous. Because when we get our senses about us, we're going to be really pissed off, especially the mothers that understand that many of their children have been killed or maimed seriously with no liability held for the ones claimed to be the patent owners of the GMO product that we could become if we let enough synthetic stuff into ourselves. Literally, you'll be held personally responsible for participating in this. And you need to consider that from a soulful perspective, because your soul's not safe right now if you're playing in that game. Like, if you're not willing to do what it takes to actually understand what it means to be a sovereign man or woman who has a king and queen responsibly placed on the throne of our inner kingdom, and if you're not willing to have a responsible king on the inside as a woman or as a man, whichever your preference is for the partner that you choose, whichever one imbalanced within you is not securely, firmly on the throne, you'll seek on the outside in a dysfunctional, unbalanced expression of a relationship that you hope will complete you. Well, that's bullshit. And that's what I truly mean by BS, which is just a belief system that doesn't serve you and is just going to take you down if you expect anyone to place the crown on your own head. And that crown is ultimately the chakra of divine connection and understanding that allows us to bring down the corona effect of being a gaseous aura around a son or daughter of which we are one. Of the same. Our origins, where do we all come from? Where do we all return to? How do we even know? We're looking for truth. And so today we came together again for a show that we hope added value to you with the things that were said and the things that were felt and the changes and the subtle nuances of lighting and all of the rest. The family members who entered the screen and passed and carried on their dynamics while mom did what she needed to do to support a friend and be in the midst too of all that's going on. It's a balance. I don't understand being a mother. I don't understand that. I've never done that. I don't know that it's for me, to be fair, to be one full time. That's a lot.
It's not for everybody. Not everybody is supposed to do that. That's the problem with the box they put us in, is that they think that, you know, we're all just supposed to do the same thing. Well, no, that's not true. It's not what everybody's here to do.
No. And yet when we try to force ourselves into these boxes, then we become like the eagle baby that was found by a farmer when it was still but an egg. And so he brought it home and placed it under a duck. And then she sat on that egg until it was raised. And then when it came out, it thought its duck was its mom. And so followed it around, quack, 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 trying to make sure that it did its best to be a good duck. And then eventually one day there was this shadow that came over top of the barnyard, and everyone said, "Oh," and everybody ran in fear of the great magnificent creature that had just drawn near. And then the little eagle, who was waddling around like a duck, looked around and went up to the sheep who was hiding and said, "What was that?" And he said, "That's an eagle," as it looked at one of the very same, who didn't know it because it had been raised like a duck and thought that it was crap at being a duck because it couldn't quack quack. Well, we're not meant to if we're meant to be soaring above the trees and the skies and in the clouds like what we came here to be. Or are we just going to quack? That's what we have to ask ourselves. How about that, my friend? It'll be the end.
Yes, very good. No quacking here.
No, I love it. But I did get called out because I had recorded that video, but I totally confused a guy that was new to my stuff. And I apparently used the analogy of a chicken who was quacking and trying to swim. And yeah, so it's a duck. But what do you do? And then just say the F word and carry on. So that's the end of today's show. We didn't go too deep into the Magna Carta, but I think that the spiritual warfare piece is really what we can really benefit from tackling, because if people don't understand how to protect ourselves, if we don't understand the spiritual weapons and tools that are being used against us, then we're just going to try to use what was written, which, as Stephen had said in the first interview that we did about the law with him, if it's not written, it's not true, because ultimately that's how truth is used against us or for us. And so that's why it's really up to us to become more responsible and get things in writing. So in a job, for instance, we want proof. When you are being asked to do something, like wear a mask, or like getting these PCR tests, or like getting the thing that is being called something it isn't because it's an experimental biological agent, for instance. When these things happen, you have to, as a sovereign being, ask for the details in writing, because you don't understand what is being asked of you when you're demanded of it in verbal speak. You need it written down so that then you can also have them sign their name to it and be held personally responsible for going along with it. Because as the Nuremberg trials proved, I was just doing my job is not a good enough excuse for participating in what is stealing humanity's rights and lives and souls. It is our very souls on the line. And our minds are the real estate being fought for, like a Game of Thrones episode, where all of the houses are colliding and everyone is going to be killed unless we rally and unite. And I vote, like, I'd rather be with you and live harmoniously in peace, even if I don't like you. You just stay over on that side. I'll stay on this side. I'm just going to keep being me. You be you. Just don't be a douche. Don't kill people. Don't hurt anything. Don't create loss or fraud or harm, and keep the peace. That's literally, there's 4 rules for a common law person, which a person and people and all of those are corporate titles. Like, if we don't understand that when we call ourselves a citizen, we're actually subjecting ourselves to the rule of the kingdom that we are putting ourselves into, which is not actually a kingdom, it's a courtyard, which is just a corporation. And if we, as sovereign beings, put ourselves into a corporate setting, then we are then becoming corporates, or we're becoming corporate slaves as citizens, owned by that system. So if we don't understand this, we can't use the tools that are there for us. And Stephen has been sharing a lot with us around tools that we can use within the law to understand our titles. And it's like, we just want to understand what we can use with the 1215 Magna Carta and Article 61 being the only law in effect, because when it was evoked, March 23rd, 2001, all other laws and the government and parliament were said to be dissolved. We just want to know what we can use so that we can rebuild, because we're needing to rebuild. And if we don't create a vision strong enough for the people to buy into, then we're going to lose the people. And you're one of those people. So we want to make sure you don't get lost, which is why we created this message today. We hope that it served you. Thank you for everything, Chantal. As always, thank you for being willing to hold the space and to contribute your grace to everyone. And is there anything else you want to say today before we go?
No, just thank you.
Thank you. Okay, beautiful. And we will get back to the end. I have, did you see this book, by the way? Martin Luther King Jr.'s Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? I just feel it would be a tragic to identify the mass of Negroes with the very small number that succumb to cheap and dishonest slogans, just as it would be a serious error to identify all Jews with the same, or with the few who exploit Negroes under their economic sway. Now, I stopped myself before I continued because I understand how offensive that could come across. And then I also continued on because it's not my writing, it's his. But it is also to say that all of what we're saying is to say that it is only when good men do nothing that evil is able to continue to exist. And what we resist persists. And therefore, that is why we must find a spiritual solution, as well as a physical solution, a practical solution. So we're open to the tools that we have to use to rebuild. But we understand as mothers, I'm not a mother specifically, but I'm a mother of creative babies, of the book that rebirthed me before the world got to see it. And ultimately, as women and creators, artists, one who use a pen, a chisel, a paintbrush, a vagina to create worlds, for instance, it's like we have a responsibility to birth the new world together. And it's the children that feel powerless right now who are really being called to use your imagination, your creativity, and your courage to do what you think you're too young to do. And to stand up and actually understand how powerful you truly are to influence the mothers that you have, who are the ones that will be able to influence the men in our communities, to be able to get everyone on board. So children, you matter. Please be responsible. And if you're in need, talk to someone, because we're here together for a reason. And I know we can go on and on. We'll let it go. So thank you. And send my love to your family, Chantal.
Yes, they're here. They hear you.
Love to all of you. Thank you for joining in. Your mother is a rock star. We appreciate her being the model, and you guys too. So have a great day together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Toodaloo, guys. Thank you
Bye.
for tuning in today. Huh? Oh, shoot. You're still live. I forgot. How are you? I hope you're well. And that was the end of the Zoom meeting. So I'm just shutting things down, and I'm going to go make some food. And I hope that you got some value from that. I would love, if you haven't already checked out the Michael and Laura show, for you to be able to do that. And if you are interested in coming to one of these Zoom where you can be in the view, would love to be able to see you too. So we'll be getting more opportunities out that will allow you to be able to do that. ljeh.ca is my website. And if you sign up, then you'll be able to get daily emails sent directly from me. I'm on a 55 days to become a peaceful inner warrior right now, united with a special practice, and very much look forward to sharing that with you. So hope you'll be able to come out and go on to ljeh.ca, sign up for that. come out to the summits that we have. Thursdays at 4 p.m. is the Lawfully Organized Summit. Sundays at 10:10 a.m. is the Sacred Secret or the Sacred Self-Compassion services. And then we've also on Thursday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All of these times are at 7 o'clock. We've got live book reading, and I have been reading Saint Germain on Alchemy the last couple weeks. And so that was where the beginning of the show started out today as well. And I would love to, my computer is frozen and it's an unstable connection. It's more than 2 hours in. Thank you for tuning in, and I very much look forward to coming to you again soon. If you're not already subscribed, do that, and definitely get those emails sent to you at ljeh.ca. Thank you. I appreciate you and wish you a wonderful day. Toodaloo.